Alrighty, welcome online, ladies and gentlemen. We have just set up our live streaming. So we are live streaming onto YouTube as well as social media. And with that in mind, we're going to give you a timer of 30 seconds just as an opportunity to invite anyone on that you may not have on the call yet. And we'll get started shortly. For those people who don't speak fluent English, we do have closed captions in the Zoom room right now, which you can set up. So have a listen to this, and we also have that on playback with YouTube.
Por favor, vaya a la parte inferior de la pantalla en Zoom o YouTube y haga clic en subtítulos para leer en español.
Kérlek menjünk képernyő aljára, a Zoomon vagy a YouTube-on, a Closed Caption részre, és ott el tud olvasni magyarul a feliratot.
Silakan klik di layar bawah pada Zoom atau YouTube dan klik caption untuk membaca dalam bahasa Indonesia.
Pour les sous-titres en français, veuillez cliquer au bas de votre écran Zoom ou YouTube sur CC ou Closed Captions.
Zoom または YouTube の画面の下部に移動し、字幕をクリックして日本語で読んでください。
請到屏幕底部點閱隱藏字幕以閱讀中文。
Παρακαλώ πηγαίνετε στο κάτω μέρος της οθόνης, στο Zoom ή στο YouTube και κάντε κλικ στους υπότιτλους για να τα διαβάσετε στα ελληνικά.
請到屏幕底部點擊隱藏字幕以閱讀中文.
אנא עברו לתחתית המסך בזום וביוטיוב ולחצו על תרגום לכתוביות בעברית.
Proszę zejść na dół ekranu na Zoomie lub YouTubie i kliknąć napisy, żeby przeczytać po polsku.
Alrighty, just setting my language to English for those people listening to or reading that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome online. Michael First, my name, one of the founding Field Advisory Board members of the company. Today is our last meeting before we have Noumi Week. And just want to say before we start the event, if you don't have a ticket to Noumi Week, guess what? Other than the first session, none of it's live streamed. None of it is able to be played back unless you have a ticket. So I want to point that out to people so you make sure you do get your tickets today because Noumi Week's going to be so exciting. With that in mind, maybe a little bit of confusion out there. Some people thought we didn't have Steve on today. Turns out we do. Our founder, Steve, he'll be here no matter what because he's all about the people. And I can see there are some new faces in the attendees on Zoom right now. Plus, we've got people watching back on YouTube and so forth. So the show goes on. With that in mind, our founder, Steve Scott, if you don't know, was behind the Total Gym with billions in sales. I've known Steve for 17 years, met him during his previous company where he was doing a lot of research into the glutathione world. And then, of course, here we are today, 4 years into Noumi with Rocketing Growth, celebrating our 4th anniversary. And Steve's here to meet you all today. So over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I didn't even know, and I had to call Sergio because Michael, I've never beat Michael. Michael has always been on this call, and if anything, he'll call me when there's 3 minutes before the call starts and says, "Are you talking today?" And it's always yes, and then I get going. So I've actually, for the first time in 4 years, I was first to this Zoom room before Michael, only because he didn't think we were having one. So here we are, and it's a smaller crowd than normal, which means we can do two things. I can go through the normal presentation that I normally go through, and we've got all the slides. Michael has the slides to do that. But at the same time, if we have no new people, and all of you have heard my presentation before, if you'd like, since we have a smaller group, we could also have a question and answer period. Now we can have one after the presentation as well, if you want to hear the presentation. So Michael, can you look at the people and see if you think there's enough new people for me to go through?
Even if there's one new person, then we talk to the new person. So there's definitely one at least. So.
Okay, well then in that case, I'll go through my normal presentation. Welcome to Noumi. And so many exciting things happen. I wish I could tell you all, but they would have to kill me if I did. So I can't tell you. There's just so many good things coming up. First of all, one thing that's really neat is you're going to hear tonight about two things that are critically important. One is our glutathione breakthrough, and the other is our hydrostat breakthrough. There are two different breakthroughs, but hydrostat makes the glutathione breakthrough possible. And but a little bit about my background. I flunked out of 9 jobs in my first 6 years after college. I just couldn't succeed in big corporations. And but on job number 10, I started a business with a partner who was he was 52 and I was 27. And he had $5,000 and I had acquired the rights to a product, and I had a vision for it. So between his money and my vision, even though it was only $5,000, we launched a little company that became known as American Telecast Corporation. And we started the company on May 10th, 1976. Most of you probably weren't even born then. And we started it that week. That was a Monday. And 5 months later, our first product that we had was selling $1 million a week. Now that was a lot of money then, because a house at the time only cost about $30,000 to $40,000. And so it was amazing. We had a tiny, tiny company, and yet we were doing $1 million a week. Now, how could we do that? Well, we had found, number one, a breakthrough product. What's a breakthrough product? A breakthrough product is a product that can do something that nothing else in the world can do as effectively or efficiently, and sometimes economically. And we found one. Number two, we married it to a celebrity. I found a celebrity that had a passion for it. Actually, he found me. And he and his daughter were my spokespersons. It was a recording artist from the 1950s and 60s named Pat Boone. And so he signed in on it, and we launched it, and $1 million a week. Well, with that, we started looking for more breakthrough products, and we would find them. And by the time I retired in 2014, I had done over 1,000 commercials, written and produced over 1,000 commercials selling our products. We had done a little over $5 billion, with a B, billion dollars in sales. At the time, we were making a lot of money, each of us partners, because we grew so fast that we brought in 2 of Bob's sons. They became partners. Then we brought in a couple others, but we all made, each of us made tens of millions of dollars in personal income. And I was making about, at the time that I retired, about $3 million a year. And I walked away from that to nothing, no dollars, no salary, no paychecks, and started living on savings. Why? Because I had become consumed with a passion to get a molecule to the world. Now, in 2000, what I haven't told you yet, in 2006, I met a medical scientist who had been with the Mayo Clinic, Mayo Organization. He was a triple board certified physician in immunology, oncology, and and hematology. Brilliant doctor, brilliant researcher. And he's the one that introduced me to this molecule. And the molecule is called glutathione. It's the most important molecule that your body makes. And it's the second most important molecule in all of life. That's my new puppy. Be quiet, Nana. Come here. I'll let her out if she continues to bark. And okay, I'm really ADD. That means attention deficit disorder, and her bark distracted me. But this doctor told me about glutathione. Glutathione is a tripeptide that's manufactured by every cell in your body. There would be no life on Earth without glutathione. Literally, no birds, no bees, no fish, no people, no horses, no grass, no trees, nothing. All of life depends on really 4 things: sunlight, water, oxygen, and food. And actually 5 things, because food isn't one of the ones, but glutathione. So what does glutathione do? We say it's the most important molecule. Unlike oxygen that does a few functions, glutathione performs over 400 functions in the human body. And let me see something here. I'm getting distracted by my picture. Don't turn your TV. Okay, let's do blur my back. Okay, there. Oops, now I see why we blurred. There's a little bit of a flare back there. Sorry. And here goes the blur my background. Okay, good. That's better. So anyway, glutathione performs over 400 functions, and it is the most studied molecule in medicinal chemistry. We're going to get the camera right here in a minute. Look, at my hair disappears into the background. Anyway, that would be scary if that were really happening. See, I still have my hair. But my son doesn't have his hair. One of my sons, Sean, shows up at work this week with a shaved head. I'm glad his mother didn't see him without preparation, because she would have started crying. Not that he looks that bad, but he really, I mean, he's bald. And I didn't even know who he was. He walked into the building and I thought, who is that? Anyway, I still have hair. Glutathione. There's right now, there's 190,705 published studies that are cataloged on the U.S. government Library of Medical Science called PubMed. And it's amazing. It's the most studied, and yet most doctors don't even know about it. And the reason it's the most studied molecule is because it impacts everything. It impacts whether or not you get sick. It impacts how sick you get. It impacts how soon you'll recover from that sickness. It impacts how fast your wounds and injuries will recover. It impacts how fast you'll recover from aerobic exercise or anaerobic exercise. It is critical. How long you live is highly influenced by glutathione. It is really remarkable. Well, I got pretty excited about it, but glutathione has some problems. I'll tell you about the functions first. What does it do? Well, of the 400 functions, let's look at a few that are critical. We'll only look at a few. Number one, of course, is oxygen transfer. Without glutathione, there'd be no oxygen transfer. Why? Your hemoglobin, the red blood cell molecules, they carry iron. And they have to have that iron in order to bond to oxygen molecules. But guess what? They have positively charged iron that is at a +3 and +2. +2 allows for the binding of hemoglobin to oxygen, but a +3 prevents it. So we'd all die from lack of oxygen if it wasn't for glutathione, because glutathione is the reduction agent for the iron in hemoglobin. It reduces it from a +3, which isn't usable, to a +2. And somebody joined the waiting room. Let me grab that real quick. Come on. And so just right now, everybody take a nice deep breath. Okay, we put a lot of oxygen in our lungs. Now what happens is that oxygen's in the lining of the lungs. The blood vessels in the lungs end up picking it up and transport it, okay, because the heart's pumping everything. And however, without glutathione, it would come into our lungs, feels good, but it wouldn't go anywhere, wouldn't get to my brain, my heart, my kidneys, everything dies very, very quickly without oxygen. So that's just one of 400 functions of glutathione. What's another one? Well, it is the protector of the mitochondrial DNA. Now, why is that important? Because as long as the DNA remains intact, keeps its integrity, its structure, the cell can't mutate. But once it's broken, the cell is then at high risk for mutating and multiplying. And that's not a good thing. Is that you, Jack?
Yeah, hi.
Hi. That's my son-in-law. He married my daughter in last September, and we're glad to have him here, but I don't think he was aware he was actually in the shot. But it's a blurred background, Jack, so you won't scare anybody.
Tell everyone to say hi.
Okay. Anyway, so Michael, Phoebe, anybody, where was I? Oh, okay, I know. So it's the protector of the mitochondrial DNA. How does it protect the mitochondrial DNA? Two ways. Number one, everybody on this call has at least 200 industrial chemicals in your body right now, many of them highly toxic, all of them toxic to one degree or another. They don't belong in your body, but we bring them into our body through the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. We may have hundreds more. We may have thousands more. There's over 80,000 industrial chemicals in our environment today. And but the CDC tested 2,000 individuals to see what the average person carries around as far as these chemical toxins. And the first test, they only tested for 143. The second test they did a few years later, they tested for 217. Bad news. Every single person had all 217 chemicals in their body. Worst news is they tested the umbilical cords of all of the women in the study that had conceived babies, and guess what? All 217 chemicals were in the umbilical cords. So that's not good. This stuff really is bad for us. Well, in fact, it's the chemical load in this cell that actually breaks the mitochondrial DNA, putting it at risk for the onset and progression of cancer. Not good. What else breaks the mitochondrial DNA? Oh, by the way, why is glutathione? How does glutathione protect the mitochondrial DNA? It's the detoxifier of the cell. I hear different numbers. Today I heard one from one scientist. It's a cellular scientist, so he ought to know. There are 31 and a quarter, in other words, 31,250,000,000 cells in your body. And that's a lot of cells, 31 trillion. And all of those are attacked by free radicals. We'll talk about that next. But what happens is these chemicals create the load. Glutathione is the detoxifier of the cell. It has a real sticky sulfhydryl molecule. It's made by every cell, so it's there. And it sticks to the chemical and gets it out of the cell. That's the good news. The bad news is your body doesn't make enough glutathione. And so that stuff really can wear us down. And we see cancers now at just about every age. But glutathione is intended to take care of the chemical load in the cell. One brilliant microbiologist from Emory University in the United States, he highly published, and he said in one symposium, he was speaking, guest speaker at a cancer symposium, and he said, if we want to prevent cancer, we must find ways to increase glutathione in the cell. And then he said, let me explain. 95% of all cancers gain traction in the human body because of the broken mitochondrial DNA. It's the chemical load in the cell that breaks the mitochondrial DNA. Glutathione is the detoxifier of the cell. So if we can raise glutathione levels, we can lower the chemical load in the cell and preserve the integrity of the mitochondrial DNA for a longer period of time. So that's pretty important. What else does glutathione do? Well, it's called the master antioxidant. And we talk about the DNA, and every one of our cells is attacked by 20,000 free radicals a day. And what's a free radical? A free radical is a scavenger. It wants to steal an electron from the cell. And when it steals that electron, bad news. It causes oxidative stress, which creates more free radicals and overloads the cell with oxygen, too much oxygen for the cell to process. And that creates a real problem called oxidative stress. And plus it creates reactive oxygen species, which are free radicals. So not good. And those free radicals also can attack the DNA, and like the chemical load, they can break the DNA. Now, what's God's answer to free radicals? God's answer to free radicals are antioxidants. What's an antioxidant do? It donates one of its electrons to the free radical. And when that happens, it sequesters or captures that free radical and renders it neutral, harmless. Problem is, we don't have enough antioxidants. We have antioxidants our body makes, like glutathione, superoxide dismutase, catalase, CoQ10. Those are all manufactured in the body. There are other antioxidants that aren't manufactured by the body. They're called exogenous antioxidants, and we consume those, right? Vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin D, vitamin A, and on and on. Well, the problem is there's a spectrum of free radicals. They're not all the same. Some are manufactured by the oxygen in our body. Some are manufactured by the hydrogen in our body. Some are manufactured by the nitrogen in our body. And they're all different, okay? They have different structures, different compositions, different sources. All antioxidants, except glutathione, are monofocus. That means each antioxidant can take out one type, but can't take out the others. So vitamin C, a great antioxidant, it's a critical antioxidant, in fact, can take out that one, but it leaves all of these bad boys. Okay, vitamin E can take out that one, but leaves all of those. CoQ10, superoxide dismutase, catalase, and so on. Glutathione is called the master antioxidant, not only because it's the most abundant. Your body makes a lot more glutathione than any other antioxidant, but it's called the master antioxidant because it can sequester and neutralize all types of free radicals, regardless of their structure, source, or composition. Every year there's new free radicals that are created by our environment. For example, those lovely 5G towers that make that work, right? And transmit the signal, those microwaves from the 5G tower enter our body. When they enter our body, they can react to the nitrogen in our body, and that produces a free radical called peroxynitrite. Why is that so terrible? Because it lives 1 billion times longer than oxygen-based free radicals. And it lives so long it can transfer from one cell to the other. And guess what it does? It targets and attacks the mitochondrial DNA. Not good. Not good at all. Okay, but thankfully we have glutathione, because glutathione can sequester and neutralize all types of free radicals, including peroxynitrite. It's the only one that can. Nothing else can even touch peroxynitrite, but glutathione sequesters and neutralizes it. Okay, that's pretty cool, except your body can't make enough glutathione. You see, Michael, if you're on the slides, can we show them what 20,000 looks like?
Sure
Just
can.
to get a picture in their mind. There it is. Now that's 20,000 people, but imagine each of those are free radicals. And imagine you're a living cell right in the bottom of center court, and somebody says, okay, $1 million for every one of you that can land a blow to the guy on center court. And you have no protection. There's no defense other than glutathione. So the stand's empty. Everybody tries to get in their blow to collect their $1 million check. And look what happens over a period of 5 days. That's 100,000. So now imagine you're on the field all by yourself and you're attacked by that 100,000 people over a 5-day period. That's what your cells go through. And it relies on the antioxidants for defense. Now, the good news is glutathione can handle it all if you have enough, but nobody has enough. Nobody. So guess what happens? Free radicals win, and we end up with all sorts of problems that are caused by free radicals. For example, the free radicals create more oxidative stress, which creates more free radicals, but it also creates inflammation. So imagine if you had an electric train and a bunch of little parts around it that, bridges that open and all of that stuff, and it's going around in circles, but somebody drops a nice little obstacle on the track. Boom! What happens? The train doesn't get through it. Doesn't function like it's supposed to. That's what inflammation does in our cells. Inflammation is our mortal enemy. Do you know inflammation is responsible for the onset and progression of every known disease? And that's highly documented. Hundreds of articles on that. And you say, well, how does it? Certainly it doesn't cause cancer. No, but it breaks the free radicals. When they create oxidative stress, the oxidative stress creates the inflammation that opens the gateway to the disease state. And off you go. Now, here's the real problem is our glutathione levels. They start out when we're born and 100%, man, but they start declining, best case at age 20. And they decline by, glutathione levels decline by 8 to 15% per decade. Now, I'll be 77 in a few weeks, and 4 weeks, I'll be 77. And that means I have 60% less glutathione today than I had at the age of 20. But the onset on the attacks on my cell from free radicals and chemicals and so on, they never stop. The demand for glutathione, I've left one thing out. Guess what else glutathione does? It's the only protector of your immune cells, of your immune system. What happens whenever there's a bacterial or viral insult, that could be a bacteria, shingles. It could be a virus like COVID, but as soon as either one of those attack the body, your immune system goes in the gear, and it wants to produce two types of assassins, T cells and B cells, primarily T cells. These great assassins that God built into our immune system. The problem is the bacteria or virus is reproducing rapidly, and when we have low glutathione levels, the T cells reproduce slowly. So guess who wins, the bacteria or virus? People with high glutathione levels by and large, didn't die during the pandemic. There's articles on that. One's entitled Low Levels of Endogenous Glutathione as the Cause of Severe Symptoms and Death in COVID-19 Patients. It came out in 2020. And was published in the Journal of Infectious Diseases. Great article, but the Russian scientist, and he proves his point, and it's been well validated since then. Why did low levels of glutathione bring about severe symptoms and death? Because when the bacteria or the virus enter your body, it starts producing a lot of inflammation. And it can produce very rapid inflammation called the cytokine storm in your lungs, in the lining of your lungs. And guess what happens? That rapid inflammation becomes the host for pneumonia. And pneumonia is a primary cause of death with COVID. But it's the inflammation that makes it possible. And guess what? Glutathione is the primary protector used to stop inflammation. How? By stopping free radicals and interrupting that pattern of oxidative stress, creating free radicals that create the inflammation. Guess what? That oxidative stress, what else it causes? Accelerated aging. And it causes it in every cell, tissue, organ. Your skin is the biggest organ of your body, but it also causes that accelerated aging in your heart, your brain, kidneys, everything, every tissue, liver, lungs. And the big question is, do you want to get older faster or do you want to stay younger longer? It all relates to oxidative stress. Well, glutathione as a master antioxidant was intended to deal with it, but it declines. If you're 50 years old, let's see, 30, 40, 50, at best, you have 30% less. Worst case, you have 45% less at 50 glutathione than you had at the age of 20. But the onslaught against the cells never stops. So you're fighting a terrible war that can make you sick and kill you with fewer bullets. Your T cells and B cells will reproduce more slowly in response to viral insult than they would if you had higher glutathione levels. So glutathione, it turns out, is critical to just about everything. Now, the problem, why don't we all go down and buy glutathione capsules? Well, I did an interview with Dr. Sotirios Nikolopoulos in Greece. He is a new member. He's been a member of our medical board for a few months. I met him a few months ago in Greece. My wife and I went, and we had a chance to spend a couple evenings with he and his family, and I got to spend a whole day with him. But he is a brilliant scientist. He was educated in the United States. His postdoctorate work was 6 years in cancer cell studies in primarily in New York at Memorial Sloan Kettering, one of the world's top cancer research centers. And he was there for 6 years in his postdoctorate after he got his doctorate. Well, anyway, so he is a cellular scientist who's joined our board, and he got a big surprise. You'll find out if you listen to the interview. I'll be interviewing him. The interview we've taped is going to be aired on Tuesday. That's the day we're going to have quite a few medical interviews. You've got to tune in for that. It's really going to be exciting. But one of the things he points out is that when he was given our product, he didn't think it would do a thing. He had been on liposomal glutathione for years with the most expensive liposomal brand from Germany, and had never noticed hardly any difference. And he told me why, and he reveals the difference between a liposome and why they can be so ineffective and inefficient, is an even better word, and our hydrostat delivery system. But anyways, a medical professor, she's been a professor for 38 years. She's his next door neighbor, and they've known each other for years. And somebody gives her a bottle of NutraSwish. And so she tries it for 3 days, doesn't notice any difference whatsoever. 2 days after that, an issue, but she decides to keep taking it because she paid for the bottle. She still had most of the bottle left. So she keeps taking it, and 2 days later, an issue that she's had for 20 years disappeared. And so she was blown away. So she comes over and tells her next door neighbor, a renowned medical scientist, Dr. Nikolopoulos, all about it. And he said, he took a bottle. I don't know if he paid for it or she gave it to him, but he started using it. And on the very first day, he exercises. Now, if you exercise, you'll see something the first time you use it. But he took it right before he does 10,000 steps a day. And he took it, did his 10,000 steps. And normally after 10,000 steps, he's tired, and he's done. He's spent. Well, he finished his 10,000 steps. And a few minutes later thought, wow, I feel so good. I could do another 10,000 steps. But he had an appointment, so he couldn't do it. He had to stop. So he said, I knew right away that this was really different. So guess what he did? He looked up our technology and he compared our hydrostat technology to liposomal delivery. Boom! He couldn't believe the difference. And then he understood why our product does what it does. And that's what we talk about in the interview on Tuesday. So I hope you'll join us. Now, it'll run different times for different time zones, but you can find all that out. Michael will confirm this. I think it's NumiWeek.com. Now, that got him so excited that he decided to really study the technology, and he really started noticing some difference. And he's not that old; he's only 60, so he's like a little kid compared to me. And but he started using it with some of his clients, and saw things he never expected. Blown away by what he's seeing. So then he did some of his cellular testing, and that really blew him away. He saw things he never expected. And so he joined our medical board. Well, we have a liver specialist who not only was a liver surgeon, but he then went on to get some more PhDs. Now he's a researcher. He loves research. And he's at the Cleveland Clinic, which is number one in heart disease in the United States, and liver disease, very high in liver disease. And Dr. Nagasawa and I, when I was in Greece, we got on a Zoom call with him, and Nagasawa explained his technology. Then he and I explained what we have, what we've seen. He saw how it related to Dr. Nikolapoulos's technology, and guess what he did? Literally on the Zoom, he goes, "I'm in." He throws up his arms. "I'm in. I'm in." So he's now on our medical board. So we've got medical board members, and you can look at them online, from Harvard, Mayo Clinic, Sloan Kettering, Stanford, UCLA, Texas Heart Institute, Baylor Medical, and on and on and on. It's amazing who's been attracted to our technology and our glutathione delivery. Well, what happened was you can't get glutathione through the stomach unless you put a liposome around it. But then when you put a liposome around something, we'll say this pin's small enough here, I'm going to go to this camera shot here. Uh-oh, hold on. There it is. Blur my screen. Okay, so we'll say this is a cell, okay? And this is glutathione, okay? It easily fits. A glutathione molecule is only 1.5 nanometers. The pore in the cell is 10 nanometers. One strand of your hair is 80,000 nanometers. Well, if you put a liposome around the molecule, guess what happens? It's too big to get into the cell. There you are. So it sits on top of the cell, and you're counting on energy to create what's called forced diffusion into the wall of the cellular membrane, and then some of it will actually end up in the cell. Versus with our technology, we wrap it in water matrices, specially prepared water, that we don't tell people how we do it. But consequently, boom, right into the cell, and we see things the world has never seen before in every aspect. Now, I knew when we developed this in 2018, if it was really as good as we thought it was, it would make a big difference in athletic performance and recovery. I gave it to one athlete, Memorial Day. He was at a party, Memorial Day of 2018, and he said, "I'll try it right before my workout." Well, he calls me at 10 o'clock at night. He just finished his workout. Now, he's a great endurance athlete. You know what he does? See if you don't try this at home. He runs on a treadmill for 1 hour at a 25-degree incline. Then he jumps off of that, gets on a rowing machine, and does intensive rowing for another hour. And so I gave it to him, and he saw such an amazing result that he called me. I think I just heard my dog cough. Anyway, and he calls me and says, "Steve, this is the greatest athletic product ever invented." I said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Normally when I finish my hour on the treadmill, my knees literally are swollen and inflamed and hurting. Then I jump on to the other." There was no inflammation. There was no swelling. He said, this stuff's unbelievable. So we got together for lunch the next day. He says, hey, it's even bigger than I thought. I said, why? He says, for 10 years, I wake up, my legs are so stiff and sore. I use a roller, then I do my stretching, then I do yoga, and then I go to work. And he said, none of it happened. I was fully recovered when I woke up. He said, this is a miracle product. That was the very first athlete that tried it. Second athlete that tried it was a guy named Bill Gillespie. Let's bring his slides up. There you go. So Bill was a strength and conditioning coach for a National Football League professional team, the Seattle Seahawks. Oh, there's my sweet dog. And Bill had been an amateur weightlifter, which means he gets drug tested, but an amateur weightlifter since he was 14 years old. And Mike, if we can bring up the chart, there you go. So you can see that peak that says 804 at 49. At 49, he set the world record bench pressing 804 pounds. And then after that, it kept going down. He lost lean muscle, which is what you do when you age. And his body was racked full of inflammation, which happens when you age, but also when you weightlifted your whole year or your whole life. And so by 2018, when I sent him the product, June of 2018, he was 59 years old. He was discouraged. He says, my weightlifting, my bench press is in the tank. I said, how much are you lifting? He says, oh, right around 700 pounds. And I said, Bill, for a 59-year-old, that's a lot of weight. He says, yeah, it's a world record for a 59-year-old, but I don't get to compete with the elite guys anymore because they're pushing over 800 pounds now. Well, he gets on our product, and guess what happens? Lean muscle came back, and so did his bench. At 59, he went clear to 915 pounds. At 60, he went to 1,050 pounds. And at 62 in 2022, his last meet, he set a new world record of 1,129.8 pounds. That's 512 kilos. 40% more weight than he lifted in his prime 13 years earlier. How does that happen? Back to me. When you lower oxidative stress, everything else in your body works better. Everything. Oxidative stress is our enemy. The inflammation it produces is our enemy. The free radicals it produces is our enemy. The accelerated aging, unless you're kind of masochistic and you want to get old faster. I want to stay as young as I can, as long as I can. So it's all our oxidative stress is the big enemy. Glutathione is God's answer to oxidative stress. Put it in every cell, built by every cell. And it's not an easy thing to build. It had to be in our very first cell in mankind cell, or there would be no life. It's in every tree and bird and fish and everything else too. But to manufacture glutathione is a 100 sequential step electrochemical process. You're taking 3 peptides, glycine, glutamate, and cysteine, L-cysteine, and they're being sewn together into this one gorgeous molecule. Now, we can't just buy raw glutathione. That'll get eaten up by the stomach. Liposomes are too big. They'll survive to one degree or another, the stomach, but they're too big for the most part to get in the cell. Why don't we go get IVs? They have glutathione IVs. They typically cost $200 to $300, or an injection, if you like injections, for about $80. That won't be as good as an IV. Problem is the half-life of glutathione, once it gets into the cell, is only 90 minutes on average for the 30 trillion cells. 90 minutes. So you get about a 6-hour bang for the buck, because it doesn't completely go away. It's only half of its original value after 90 minutes. So with IV glutathione, you get a 6-hour bang for the buck, and it's got a pretty impotent tail for another 20 to 30 hours. You need, honestly, we know of a particular surgeon who does plastic surgery 14 hours a day, 5 days a week. He needed 3 glutathione infusions a week, $900 a week. and to keep his mental focus sharp and keep his physical stamina. Somebody gave him a sample of our product, and he said, okay, I won't do the infusions this week. He thought everything was going to go down. Worse mental focus, less stamina, went up. He couldn't believe it. At $2 a serving instead of $300 a serving. Needless to say, he never went back to IV glutathione. In fact, he got in contact with us and asked me, he said, if I put a number of doctors in my office at night, would you come explain the science behind what you have? I said, sure. Here, I'm going to go back to the blurry thing. 1 minute. So I show up, and there it is. I show up, and there are 42 doctors in his office waiting for the lecture. He gives his testimony beforehand. I never needed to be there. Then his head nurse, gave her testimony. That one blew everyone away. And then his wife, they didn't even need me. But people wanted to know, why does it do this? So that's when people call on me. So anyway, so better than infusions at a fraction of the price. The other thing is, if it starts to go down during the day, say you've got cells that are really using that up, maybe your brain cells need more during the day, or you're an athlete, so now your major muscle groups and your heart, everything's going to need a little bit more. Guess what you do? You swish it like a mouthwash. So you take another serving, swish it into the bloodstream, and 70 seconds later, it's in your cells. We tell athletes, swish it 5 minutes before a workout, 5 minutes before an event. And if you have a multi-hour event, we'd say swish every hour or two. Now, we've got big news at NUMMI Week. Big news that relates to the half-life. You're going to want to hear it. Nobody else in the world is even close, and we'll explain it why. But it is exciting what's coming down the pike. And it's not going to be that long. We have made a huge breakthrough that'll automatically be added to auto ship orders starting in the fourth quarter. It's truly amazing. So another athlete that we had, she was breaking all of her records in a 100-mile bike race when she went end over end, hit the pavement so hard it knocked her out, broke her helmet, shredded her face. And she was hospitalized that day, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Came home Tuesday night. Well, the plastic surgeon said her face, which had all sorts of contusions and abrasions, road rash, because her helmet broke. And they said it would take 5 weeks to clear. And then she'd have to wait 60 days and then see the plastic surgeon to figure out a protocol for dealing with the scars. Well, she gets home on Tuesday night and thinks, hey, this stuff is small particle. Maybe it'll help my face clear. So she put some on a cotton ball, put it on all the affected areas, up here and down, all their neck. And she didn't put it on her hand. But she did that once on Tuesday, then 3 times on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. By Sunday, her face was completely clear. Not a mark, not a scar. The plastic surgeon had never seen anything like it. Guess what? She didn't put it on her hand, and an abrasion that she had on her hand after the same 5 days of topical application, only it didn't get any. It was just as raw as it was the day of the accident. So anyway, she sent me the before and after pictures. And when I saw them, I thought, oh my goodness, we may have the world's best skincare product. And I had owned 5 cosmetic companies in my life with my partners. And we had big celebrities on them like Cher and Ali McGraw, Lisa Hartman, Meredith Baxter Birney, Angie Dickinson, all these big stars on our different lines. But I had never seen anything like what I saw with the cyclists. So I put it in spray bottles. Our product, this 2018, put it in and sent it out to a few women and said, spray your face 5 times a day and do that for 8 weeks. And let's see what kind of before and afters we get. So here's the first one that came back, and we can zoom in on that, Michael, if you would be so kind. Now, that's a miracle. That was 7 weeks. And I sent that to my former formulator, who became the head formulator for the company that created Botox. And when he saw it, he called me right away. I mean, instantly, and said, Steve, she's had a facelift. There's no product in the world that can do that. Botox can't even do that. I said, John, ours does it. She's a farmer. She lives on a farm, works on a farm. She's never had a needle, a laser, a scalpel touch her face. She doesn't even use other skincare products. And look at that. And he said, well, man, you've got something nobody else has. I said, I know. Well, now we're going to show you more before and afters real quick, and then we'll call it a day. That was when I was 71. I sprayed my right hand, but I didn't spray my left hand. Look at the difference. That was in 12 weeks of spraying about 4 times a day. This lady's 84 years old. And we said, how often did you look at her neck, look at her chin, her mouth, her cheeks? How often did you spray? She said, well, I had multiple bottles all over the house. Anytime I passed one, I just spritz it real quick. And in 4 weeks, you can see the difference. She also swished a lot, she said. Next, there's another 80-plus-year-old. I think she was 84. And this lady said, I used to have old lady legs. Now I have young lady legs. And that's pretty exciting, 10 weeks. This was only 8 days. This is a skincare specialist, an esthetician in Miami, Florida, who owns her own salon. And she said, Steve, I can't wait 8 weeks. Look what it did in 8 days. Look at where did my pores go? And look how much tighter, smoother, brighter. She said, look at the lift it gave my eye. She said, there's nothing in the world that can do this except us. This is a 60-year-old, and that was after 1 month. And you can see she had the same type of facelift effect, but look at her after 6 months. Now, Aaron and I, our CEO, met her. She came to our office. We would have guessed she was 42 to 45 years old, not 60. Pretty amazing. Next. There it is, side by side. He's 67. See, it works on men too. Tighter, brighter, smoother, younger. You should write those adjectives down. Tighter, brighter, smoother, younger. Okay, next. There you can see for yourself, that was 10 days. That's pretty crazy. She doesn't need much, but her pores were big and then they were diminished. Look how much smoother her face is, and her skin tone is perfectly even. That's pretty amazing after 10 days. She's an 80-year-old. That was 3 weeks. Next. She was in her 60s, but she smoked, and that's why her neck and around her mouth is so bad. But look, can you go back, Michael? Here we go. That was only 8 weeks. And boy, we gave her back at least 10 years. Next. That was 6 days. That's pretty cool. Next. Okay, she's in Nigeria. Her daughter's a doctor and brought her the product. She's 80 plus. Look at the blackness in the upper half of her face. That's because of poor melanin production or management, rather. And then after 4 weeks, it's managed just fine, and her face is brighter and tighter and better looking than it had been in years. So needless to say, she liked it. Okay, that's sun damage in Australia. Michael knows all about that. Now, this man's 94 years old, and that was after 8 months. He said, I love the new look, but I'll tell you what I like better. I feel like the guy on the right, not the guy on the left. And he said, this really is amazing. Okay, we'll show one last one because I like this lady. She was in Hungary when we were there a year ago, 87 years old. Look at the difference. Honestly, it looked like we took 20 years off of her skin. Okay, why do we show you that? Number one, we have the world's best skincare product, but the same biochemical activity that works with the largest organ of your body, your skin, glutathione performs the same biochemical activity in your heart cells, your brain cells, your liver cells, your kidney cells. That's what's cool. We can't show you a picture of those, but it's the same molecule performing the same functions. What we have is a breakthrough beyond description. And we've always known what we had was amazing. What we didn't know was all the science behind it. Yes, we reduce oxidative stress, but cellular specialist Dr. Nicolopoulos has now gone through science, and he has a science study that proves everything we've ever thought about it. So I won't get into it. You'll get to see the interview on Tuesday if you come to NUMMI Week. Well, Michael, that's about it, buddy. We won't be having this meeting next week, but we will the week after.
Beautiful. Yes, next week is a totally different week, guys. So just be aware, as we said at the start of the session, the very first session with Sam from Auxano will be open to everyone. Everything else won't be. It's like get a ticket, and then you'll be able to get the playbacks, the replays. There'll be nothing on YouTube to go watch if you didn't get a ticket later on. So it's important that you do. I just wanted to say too that we do have a company-driven Facebook group you can use. And if you go to NUMMI New You, you'll see some amazing before and afters and testimonials. In fact, last night, a testimonial before and after went in there that'll blow your mind. So you want to make sure you go check it out. When you click on that group, it'll ask you who invited you, and you have to click agree to group rules. Once you've done that, you'll be in there. So with that in mind, wish everyone an amazing weekend, and I